He sold out 70 shows in a row. Grown men wept at the sound of his name. Governments handed him keys to their cities. And then, those same governments watched as police raided his bedroom. The same fans who wept started burning his posters. The same media that called him a genius started calling him a predator. Nothing changed. No new person appeared. Same man, same hands, same voice. So what actually happened? Because this isn't a story about fame. Every celebrity gets famous. This is a story about how one human being became two completely opposite things at the same time, and what that says about us just as much as it says about him. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958 in Gary, Indiana. Gary wasn't a place that produced superstars. It was a steel mill town, cracked sidewalks, shared bedrooms. A family of 9 living in a house smaller than most hotel suites. His father, Joe Jackson, ran the household like a rehearsal room. Practice wasn't optional. Missing a note had consequences. Michael later said in interviews that he'd freeze when he saw his father walk into the room, even as an adult. But the results were undeniable. By the time Michael was 10 years old, he was performing on national television. Not rehearsing, performing. At 11, he had a #1 single. The Jackson Five broke through in 1969, 5 brothers from Gary, Indiana, suddenly on every magazine cover, every radio station, every television set in America. But even then, Michael was different. His older brothers were good. Michael was something else. His voice had a quality that didn't make sense for a child. His feet moved like the floor was helping him. Studio engineers who'd worked with the biggest names in music would stop mid-session just to watch him. He was 11 years old, and he was already the best in the room. That kind of talent is a gift. But it also puts a target on you from the industry, from the press, and eventually from the entire world. By the late 1970s, Michael had gone solo. His 1979 album Off the Wall sold over 20 million copies. Critics called it a masterpiece. It should have been the story, but it was just the opening act. In 1982, Michael Jackson released Thriller. What happened next is almost impossible to explain to someone who didn't live through it. Thriller became the best-selling album in recorded history. Over 66 million copies sold worldwide. It produced 7 singles. All 7 reached the top 10. 7 different songs, all top 10. One album. No one had ever done that. No one has done it since. The music video for the title track wasn't a video. It was a 14-minute short film. A storyline, a director, choreographed zombies, a horror movie inside a pop song. When it aired on MTV, people called their friends. They gathered around televisions. They watched it again. It's still the most watched music video ever made. And then came the moment that even people who weren't alive in 1983 have seen. On May 16, 1983, Michael performed at the Motown 25 television special. Midway through Billie Jean, he slid backward across the stage, weight forward, feet barely leaving the ground in a move that looked physically impossible. The audience went completely silent. Then they erupted. Backstage, fellow performers reportedly stood with their mouths open. Fred Astaire, one of the greatest dancers in Hollywood history, called Michael the next morning and said he'd been watching something extraordinary. Michael Jackson wasn't just the biggest star on earth, he was untouchable. The love that followed wasn't normal. His 1987 Bad World Tour played to over 4.4 million people across 15 countries. In one city in Germany, 72,000 fans packed a single stadium. People fainted in the crowd. Security carried them out on stretchers, not from injury, but from the sheer overwhelm of being in his presence. There's footage of a reporter asking fans outside a concert, "Why do you love him so much?" One woman just starts crying. She can't find words. She doesn't need them. That wasn't manufactured. That was real human feeling pointed at one person, and part of it was the music, obviously, but a bigger part was who he appeared to be when the cameras weren't on him. In 1985, he co-wrote We Are the World, 45 musicians in one room, one night, recording a charity single that raised over $63 million for African famine relief. He visited children's hospitals quietly, with no press. He paid for surgeries for kids he'd never met, according to multiple people close to him at the time. His Heal the World Foundation reportedly directed over $300 million to children's causes during his lifetime. For millions of people, Michael Jackson wasn't just entertainment. He was proof that someone with that much power could actually use it for something real. But something was already shifting underneath. And once it shifted, it never fully went back. The beginning of the hate, the 1990s, arrived, and the story started to change shape. Michael's appearance had been quietly transforming for years. His skin had grown significantly lighter. His nose had changed, once, then again, then again. His features looked increasingly altered. He explained it publicly as vitiligo, a skin condition that destroys pigmentation. Dermatologists who later reviewed his medical records confirmed the diagnosis. The press didn't care about the explanation. Wacko Jacko. That was the nickname British tabloids gave him. He said in multiple interviews that he hated that name more than almost anything, but it was everywhere. It stuck. Then in 1993, a 13-year-old named Jordan Chandler accused Michael Jackson of sexual abuse. Everything stopped. Michael denied it completely. A criminal investigation began. Before charges could be filed, the matter was settled out of court, reportedly for $23 million. Michael's legal team said settling was faster than fighting a trial that could last years. His critics said it was an admission. The public split down the middle, loudly, and that split, the one that formed in 1993, never healed, not during the next trial, not after his death, not today. Michael Jackson's home, Neverland Ranch, was a 2,700-acre property in Santa Barbara County that he'd purchased for $19.5 million in 1988. It had a zoo with giraffes, elephants, and orangutans. It had a full carnival, rides, games, cotton candy. It had a movie theater that seated 50 people, a train that circled the grounds. He regularly flew terminally ill children in from hospitals across the country so they could spend a day there, free, no press, no cameras. To his supporters, Neverland was the physical proof of who Michael really was. A man so scarred by a loveless childhood that he built the childhood he never had, and then shared it. To his critics, it was something else entirely. In 2003, journalist Martin Bashir released a documentary called Living with Michael Jackson, filmed over 8 months of private access. In one clip, Michael sits beside a 12-year-old boy named Gavin Arvizo and says, on camera, that sharing his bedroom with children is the most loving thing a person can do. That clip traveled around the world within hours. The following year, Michael Jackson was charged with 7 counts of child molestation and 2 counts of administering an intoxicating agent to a minor. The trial lasted 5 months. It drew 2,200 journalists from 24 countries. It was the most covered celebrity trial since O.J. Simpson. In June 2005, Michael Jackson was acquitted on all 14 counts. Not some, all 14. 12 ordinary people, a retired farmer, a nurse, a mail carrier, listened to weeks of testimony from both sides and came back with not guilty on every single charge. His supporters called it vindication. His critics said justice had failed. But here's what most people don't know. After the verdict, 3 jurors gave media interviews. 2 of them said they personally believed something inappropriate had happened. but that the prosecution hadn't proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a different statement than "we think he's innocent." The verdict ended the legal case. It never ended anything else. After the trial, Michael quietly left the United States. He lived in Bahrain for a period, then Ireland, eventually Las Vegas. He moved with his 3 children and almost no public presence. He gave no concerts. He gave almost no interviews. The man who had once filled stadiums on every continent was now living in borrowed houses, running through money, and disappearing from his own story. 4 years passed. Then in March 2009, he walked onto a stage in London and announced 50 comeback concerts at the O2 Arena. He called the tour "This Is It." The tickets, all 50 shows, sold out in 4 hours. People had queued through the night in the cold. Fans flew in from over 40 countries just to be in the room when they went on sale. Whatever had happened, whatever people believed, whatever had been said and printed and argued about for 15 years, they still wanted to see him. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson died at his rented home in Los Angeles. He was 50 years old. His personal doctor, Conrad Murray, had been administering propofol, a powerful hospital-grade anesthetic, to help him sleep. That night, something went wrong. Murray was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years. The day Michael died, Twitter went down. Google's search infrastructure buckled under the traffic. CNN and TMZ's servers struggled to stay online. It was one of the only times in internet history that a single news event broke the web. Think about that. Millions of people, all at the exact same moment, typing the same name. It didn't matter if they loved him or hated him. They all had to know. The story wasn't over. In 2019, a documentary called Leaving Neverland aired on HBO and Channel 4. 2 men, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, described in extensive detail alleged abuse by Michael Jackson that they said began when they were children. What made this different from previous accusations was who these men were. Wade Robson had testified at the 2005 trial in Michael's defense. He'd given sworn testimony that nothing had ever happened. James Safechuck had given similar statements over the years. Both now said they had been lying. Both said they had been groomed not just into silence, but into active defense of the person they were accusing. Michael's estate called the documentary a dishonest attack. His family called it a character assassination of a man who couldn't defend himself. Radio stations in New Zealand, Canada, and the UK temporarily pulled his music. But the streaming numbers didn't collapse. His songs stayed on charts. His albums kept selling. A survey conducted in 2022 found that public opinion on Michael Jackson remains almost perfectly split. Roughly equal numbers believe he was innocent and a great human being, and roughly equal numbers believe the accusations were true. No verdict satisfied everyone. No documentary settled it. And here's the honest thing to say, it may never be settled. At the beginning of this video, the question was simple. Same man, same hands, same voice. How do you become both the most worshipped entertainer who ever lived and one of the most controversial figures in modern history? The answer isn't simple. And anyone who gives you a simple version is leaving something out. What's true is this: no artist in history sold more music, broke more records, or moved more people than Michael Jackson. The numbers aren't close. The moonwalk, the Thriller video, We Are the World, these are permanent marks on what popular culture can be. Also true, the accusations against him didn't come from nowhere. They came from real people with real details across multiple decades. Both of those things are part of the same story. The love was real, the music was real, the doubt was real, and the conversation, as you just watched, is nowhere close to over. If you want more stories like this one, people whose lives don't fit a clean narrative, There's a video on this channel that covers a story with a lot of the same questions about fame, truth, and how the world decides who it remembers. Subscribe if you want more of this every week. No fluff, just the full picture.